Today we need to discuss writing equations of perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines, as you know from middle school, are two lines that meet at right angles. But more specifically for algebra, they are lines whose slopes are called opposite reciprocals. Now, what that word means is that if I have one slope that is y equals 3/4 x plus a 1, perpendicular to it would be opposite. That one's positive, so opposite would be negative. And it has to be the reciprocal of the fraction, so the flip from 3/4 to 4/3 x, and then minus anything, minus a 4. These are perpendicular because their slopes are opposites and reciprocals. So again, if I have y equals 2x plus a 6, opposite would be negative, and the reciprocal of this would actually be 1/2. And it could be plus in anything, minus in anything. Because 2, every whole number is always over a 1. And so the reciprocal of that would be to flip that fraction and put it under a 1. But let me show you something that is not perpendicular. If I have y equals 2/5 x and y equals 5/2 x, those are not perpendicular because they are reciprocals, but they are not opposites. So it has to have both. It has to have opposite sign and flip of the fraction, the reciprocal. So let's look at what that looks like. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. So I need my answer to be slope-intercept form, and I need the line to be perpendicular to this one here. So for this line, we know that the slope is a 3. So we need to do opposite and reciprocal of that. Well, this is a 3 over a 1. So to make opposite and reciprocal, it's going to be a negative 1 over 3. And then an x1 and a y1. The problem that so many people make with this is they flip the fraction at the end instead of at the beginning. You must flip your fraction first. You must do that first before you plug into point slope form. So we have y minus a 2 equals negative 1/3 times x minus a 3. You're a pro at this piece now. So we have y minus 2 equals negative 1/3 x. Negative 1/3 times the negative 3 gives you a positive 1. Plus a 2 to both sides. Y equals negative 1/3 x plus a 3, and there we go. So now let's look again. On this one, I need it to be perpendicular. So my slope starts out as a negative 5 over 2. So I need to do opposite, so I'm going to need a positive, and then reciprocal would be 2 over 5. Here's my x1 and y1. So y minus 0 equals 2/5. This is the one that I'm using. Times x minus a 5. Y minus a 0 is really just a 0. Distribute my 2/5 and I have 2/5 x minus a 2. And there is my answer. Because guys, remember, we can see my initial slope was this. Here was my new slope. Those are perpendicular. This one would be a good one to try on your own and pause the video. So if I want it to be perpendicular, I would need to first of all figure out what the slope of this line is. So I would need to put it into slope-intercept form. So I'll go minus an x to both sides. So I have negative 6y equals negative x plus a 15. Divide everything by a negative 6. So y equals, this is a positive 1/6 x minus a 15 over a 6. Okay, so my m is 1 over 6. But I need perpendicular, so I need opposite reciprocal. So negative 6 over 1, which is really just a 6. And here's my x1 and my y1. Now we can plug in. Y minus negative 2 equals a negative 6 times x minus negative 1. All these are plus or positives. You know how that goes. We have y plus a 2. Here we distribute negative 6x, negative 6. Subtract a 2 to both sides, and y equals negative 6x minus an 8. And you can always check. See, my slope here was a 1/6. Here it's a negative 6x. But keep in mind, we had to put this in slope-intercept form first so we could see what my slope actually was. So that one was a little bit more difficult than the others.